Hi, everyone. I'm Denise O'Malley. I'm the founder of Udefine Wellness, and welcome to another edition of An Apple a Day, our webinar series for wellness. And that's wellness of your business, your body, or your life. And today I have the pleasure to introduce you to my go-to expert for anything related to CBD. So welcome, Jennilynne Coley, to this webinar. Good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Denise.
Awesome. So I've been wanting to do a webinar on CBD for a very long time. And we've titled this one, Unveiling the Mystery of CBD for Your Health. I think there's a lot of misconception out there. In fact, me personally, it took me a long time to embrace the idea of using CBD for my own health. And we'll get into that story a little bit later. But Jennilynne, let's just kind of do a brief overview as to why you got into CBD, and then we're going to progress. And if you want to just continue into it, you know, this isn't your joint type of a thing, right? But let's talk about you first, and why did you embrace CBD into your life?
Absolutely, Denise. So much like you, and I actually don't even know your full story, but the powers that be kind of did their job in terms of demonizing this plant. And so I was very leery at first to even think about going anywhere near it and incorporating CBD into my daily use, really as a dietary supplement. But I have always kind of been a naturopath. I don't even really take ibuprofen or acetaminophen when I have a headache. So I like to do things naturally. And I've always had a love for biology. Actually, in fact, I got my IB certificate in biology in high school.
Oh my gosh.
So love the human body, love plants, and it just kind of came back around full circle as I've been doing energetic healing over the past couple of years. I'm always looking for different things that I can incorporate and introduce to my clients, but it really hit home with me on a more personal level in terms of my boys. So I'm a single mom, and my boys are currently 14 and 8, and they're both very active athletes, from tackle football to junior Olympic track to basketball. I mean, you name it, they're very active. And my 14-year-old several years ago actually had 2 non-sports related concussions. And we had no problems in the sports. It was things happening outside. And so the results or the research really on the long-term effects of multiple concussions in youth just doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
I began kind of searching and looking for something that could both aid in recovery for him, but also for prevention, because he then said, "Mom, I want to take boxing." I was like, I don't know about that. So as I began to do some research, then I started to learn more about what CBD can do in that arena. And it just kind of took off from there, and we were researching more about it.
Okay, so we're going to come back to the concussions in a second, but let's clear up something because I kind of put the cart before the horse. CBD stands for what?
CBD actually stands for cannabidiol, and it is one of approximately 100 known cannabinoids that are found in both the industrial hemp plant and the marijuana plant.
And but you said there's more than 100. I mean, there's other sources of CBD besides marijuana and hemp.
Well, where you're going to find actual CBD is going to be in those 2 plants. Now, there are other cannabinoids that exist.
Okay.
So THC is another very common cannabinoid that you hear of, mostly because of its psychoactive effects that are found in the marijuana plant. But there are other cannabinoids that are both inside the body. Those are called endogenous cannabinoids or endocannabinoids. Those are ones the body produces. And then there are phytocannabinoids that you find from plants like hemp and marijuana. But you can also find them in things like echinacea and hops, and that have cannabinoid properties and cannabinoid-like properties. So things you ingest probably every day that have cannabinoid-like properties in the body are things like black pepper.
Oh, wow.
Oregano.
Okay.
So we're already ingesting things that act like cannabinoids in the body every single day. And to kind of put that into perspective of what that even means is we all have something called an endogenous cannabinoid system, or endocannabinoid system for short. Sometimes you'll even see it listed as ECS. Mm-hmm. That system is actually our body's largest self-regulatory system. So even more so than our central nervous system, our respiratory system, any other system in the body, that regulates our mood, our sleep, our appetite, immune system. It is very, very important and vital to how our bodies function. Mm-hmm. And so we don't produce actually enough cannabinoids within the body on our own. And so it is important to supplement with a phytocannabinoid that actually interacts with what are known as CB1 receptors that are found mostly in our brain, in our central nervous system, and then C2 receptors that are found mostly in our gut.
Wow. Okay. I have a host of questions that come up about it. So, and I don't even know where to go with this. So we're going to just kind of plod through this. This is not scripted, obviously. And I know enough to be dangerous with it. I'm definitely not the expert. That's why I have you on here. CBD sounds, there's been a lot about it. I mean, and here we are in Colorado, and so we have, first we had medical marijuana, and now we have on almost every street corner a store that you could buy marijuana, and they have all these products, and they're advertising themselves as wellness clinics and health clinics. And you search holistic wellness in Colorado, and you're going to get a lot of these stores on it. That's not what we're talking about normally. How do you know where to get something with quality and make, as a consumer, where do you start?
That's a really great question, because there is so much conflicting information out there that it can be really overwhelming and it can be really confusing. So let me just back up for just a minute, because I think it's important to understand a little bit more about the history of it and why this is important for our bodies. So it's all really just cannabis, okay? And the plant has been severely demonized. You're finding the same cannabinoids in both the marijuana plant and the hemp plant. The marijuana plant has no industrial applications, and it's mostly grown for its psychoactive effects, the THC, the high, okay? The hemp plant has over 52,000 industrial uses and benefits. So we're talking about things like clothing and paper and construction, beauty products, ingesting it as a dietary supplement. There's lots of different things that you can use the industrial hemp plant for. And actually, it was a very stable crop here in the U.S. Its uses trace back to the early 1600s in China. And there's a lot of debate over whether it was brought here when the early European settlers arrived here in the 1600s, or whether it was already found here with the natural indigenous peoples that were here before. And so I'm not going to get into which one it was. There's a lot of debate over that. But just know that it traces back to actually being a crop that was at one point in time mandatory for farmers to grow here in the U.S. It was actually illegal for them not to grow hemp. And
really?
Actually, it was.
Wow. Wow.
And it was used as a form of currency, and they actually could pay their taxes with it. It has a very long, rich history. And so I'm not going to go into everything because there is a lot there.
Right.
Just know that the cannabis plant in general was a part of the U.S. pharmacopoeia. So they used it to treat, before the pharmaceutical industry became what it is today, they used it to treat all sorts of ailments. This was something that was naturally prescribed by doctors all over the world, including here in the U.S. And as hemp was grown here, it was a natural part of our food supply. Okay, the animals were eating the hemp, we were eating the animals. It has a lot of amazing properties in terms of depositing nutrients and minerals into the soil. And it also is a very absorbent plant. So it can be used as a phytoremediator to clean up the soil. So it was used as a rotational crop as well. So getting into the fruits and vegetables, and then we were eating those as well. So they estimate that when it was a part of our natural food supply, we were all getting about 50 milligrams per day of CBD just in our natural diet.
Huh. Wow.
Then, so it kind of was robbed and taken away from us, really, because, again, this plant has many industrial uses and applications, and it became very threatening to the oil industry. Because anything petroleum can do, hemp can actually do better. It's biodegradable. It was very threatening to the lumber industry. We really probably don't ever need to cut down another tree again because of what hemp can do, how fast it grows, how little water it uses, how little to no pesticides that are needed to grow it. And it can be used again for paper and clothing and things like that. So the printing presses were used at the time to spread this mass hysteria. And really at that time, then that's when marijuana became known as marijuana. It was not called marijuana before then. So they lumped the hemp plant in with marijuana. People did not realize what they were voting for. And they passed the Marijuana Tax Act in 1937, which then essentially raised the taxes so high that it made it nearly impossible for farmers to continue to grow the plant. And that's what essentially ended up removing it from our food supply. And in 1971, with the whole war on drugs, that's what actually had it rescheduled, the hemp plant, in with marijuana and classified as a Schedule I drug.
Okay. So fast forward to today, and it has now become a very in vogue product to be using in healthcare. And you talked a little bit about the reasons why you turn to it for your son. And I think this is probably a good time to explain why I changed my attitude about it. You know, I'm one of those that didn't want to have anything to do with it because I didn't understand the difference between marijuana and hemp. I really didn't. I mean, yeah, I knew about what the average person would know. But my husband and I both are recovering alcoholics. And so all we knew is that it was something that had THC, and we just didn't want to go anywhere near it. There wasn't enough education at the time. So we really moved away from it. And it wasn't until we had one of our kids who just honestly believed that he was ADHD. He'd never been diagnosed with it. In fact, I refused to get him diagnosed for it. But we knew that it was actually something else different. And he was pushing us to get him on Ritalin and Adderall. And for those who are not aware, it's very easy for kids to get Ritalin and Adderall through friends at school who are legally on it. My son had experimented with it, and he had found that he liked how it calmed him down. So he was pushing us to get him diagnosed so he can get a prescription. And I turned to a friend of mine who is with one of the CBD companies, one of the MLMs that are out there. And I said, okay, we're at our wit's end. What can you suggest? And we put our son on some capsules that had CBD. And the response he had was phenomenal. It calmed him down, and everything that the Ritalin or the Adderall would do, this did, and we felt better about giving it to him. Definitely more holistic, and it's not part of his medical record, and that was huge for us, is to not have that diagnosis out there. But as you were saying with your sons, with concussions, for me, turning my attitude around, and my husband's as well, is I had a really bad concussion. I mean, one of those concussions that you didn't remember that you got hit on the head. It was so bad because it was affecting your memory. And it was through using the CBD myself that literally within a couple of days, I got my memory back. So, we are definitely fans of it as well. But, okay, the question then lies, I've seen all kinds of different things. It comes in oils, it comes in capsules, it comes in different. For the average person, how do they know where to get started in terms of what do you take And, who's prescribing it? I mean, how do you find someone with the knowledge like you have to trust, to know, how do you know what to take? You don't just take anything. You gotta know, right?
Correct. And so there's lots of different places you can go. A lot of it, I think, starts with kind of doing your own independent research. So there's upwards now of about 30,000 independent scientific studies that have been done on CBD and really any ailment you can think of.
Wow.
Can be overwhelming. So, unless you have a lot of free time, you're probably not going to read through all of those studies. But really just kind of asking and networking and getting connected with people that you find that are knowledgeable. And the problem right now with especially a lot of doctors is that only about 1 in 9 universities are actually educating doctors on the endocannabinoid system.
Right.
So a lot of them don't even know about it. But you can ask them, because sometimes they do know, and sometimes they may be able to just refer you to somebody else if they don't have a whole lot of knowledge or expertise or understanding on it. But again, yes, it can be used medicinally, but it also can be used just as a natural everyday dietary supplement, because what they've also found is really the whole plant, which includes all the cannabinoids, including the THC, is actually what's best, because that does what's called create the entourage effect in the body. So all of the different chemical compounds in the plant, the terpenes, which are responsible for the aroma, the flavonoids, which are responsible for the flavor, and those are things you can find in all plants, the chlorophyll, as well as the cannabinoids, all of those interacting together then in the body enhance that entourage effect and allow the body to really do what's called homeostasis, which puts it in perfect balance and allows it to heal itself. And you can find it in lots of different forms, in capsules like you were talking about, in oils, in drops. There's different ways that you can ingest it. Really the key things you want to be looking for, especially if you're not in a quote unquote marijuana legal state, is you want to make sure that wherever you're getting it from, that they're in compliance with the federal farm bill. So the federal farm bill says that the hemp that they're extracting the CBD from actually has to be imported from Europe or Canada. That allows it to be shipped and sold across state lines. It has to have less than 0.3 THC in it. That's what makes it considered to be industrial hemp. And then it has to be extracted from either the seed or the stalk. Now that is not in any way, shape, or form to knock any CBD that may be being grown here domestically in the US. There's nothing wrong with it being grown here in the US, other than just to be cautious about, again, because the hemp plant is very absorbent, our soils aren't the cleanest here. So you just want to make sure that the soils are pretty clean and where that's being grown from, so that that stuff is not then being put into your body. Yeah, and then you want to look at, is it actual hemp oil or is it CBD oil? So they both technically are hemp oil, but most often when you're seeing hemp oils online, and especially if you're seeing them in the grocery store, because you can go down to the grocery store and you can buy hemp seeds and you can buy hemp protein powder and you can buy hemp milk. That's all been legal across the US for quite some time. But that hemp oil has very little to no CBD in it, because typically the way that that is made is by cold pressing the seeds. So it's a very different process than if you're extracting the hemp oil from the seed and or the stalk to make it into actual CBD oil. You also want to be very careful about how it's being extracted, because a lot of companies will use ethanol or butane. And I don't know about you, but I don't have any desire to put gasoline in my body.
No. Yeah.
So there's different debates on that and different safety measures, but really I know what I'm comfortable with in my body is finding a company that uses supercritical CO2 extraction. That's actually the safest method of extraction. And then you also want to pay attention to if they're using any sort of carrier oils in the CBD. Oftentimes those carrier oils are propylene glycol. not good for your body either. So you want to look for something like an MCT, which is basically just fractionated coconut oil. And then you also want to really pay attention to the labeling on the product. How many milligrams are actually in that bottle? Because it might seem like, oh, this one's only $40, so I'm going to get that one versus one that may be a different price. But please, please, please pay attention to, does it actually even have CBD in it? Or is it just hemp oil? How many milligrams are in the bottle and how many milligrams are you getting per serving? Because if you're getting 1 or 3 milligrams per serving, it's probably not going to do very much for your body. And you also just want to be aware, especially here in Colorado, that you're not going to find the type of CBD oil extracted from hemp that's in compliance with the Farm Bill in the dispensaries. They actually cannot sell it there because it doesn't have a high enough concentration of THC in that CBD oil. So I'm not saying don't go to the dispensary, you can do that, but just again, pay attention to how are they extracting. Safety and quality are really, really important for what you're putting in your body, and just know you're not going to get the industrial hemp version in the dispensaries here.
Wow, this is a lot of information. It's really good too. I know I've seen CBD oil for sale in yoga studios, chiropractic offices, massage therapy offices, and we hope that the people who I know who are selling it, I know they're knowledgeable about what they're doing and checking out the companies that they're working with. But can anyone sell CBD?
Oh,
I know that's a loaded question. Sorry.
That's a very, very loaded question. Okay, so let me start here because there's a very common misconception that CBD is federally legal. It is not. That is why they've been actively working on legislation to try and have the industrial hemp plant removed as a Schedule I drug. So it is not, in general, federally legal. What makes it federally legal to ship and sell in all 50 states is those things I mentioned earlier that are in compliance with the federal Farm Bill. Okay. Now, in terms of being here in Colorado or any really legal state, if it's being extracted from the marijuana plant, you need to make sure that you're in compliance with your state's licensing laws and that you're doing everything you need to be doing there in terms of trying to sell it that way. If it's coming from the industrial hemp plant, however, there are lots of different companies where you can become a distributor of that company as an individual person or a business. And then, yes, you can go ahead and sell that CBD.
But so there's no certification. There's no required education to do it.
No.
So it is up to the consumer to be doing their homework and finding someone who understands and is knowledgeable about it, like you are.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Always do your research, and if you don't know, ask.
Okay. So this begs the question then of what happens if you don't know what you're doing. You've bought some because you went and you had a workout and they were selling it there at the counter. And you thought, hey, yeah, this sounds kind of cool. And, the person behind the counter perhaps didn't know a whole lot. You go home and you take too much. What happens? What are the side effects, or what are the adverse reactions of you don't know what you're doing and you take too much of it?
Well, that there again depends on where you got the CBD from and if it's coming from the plant or if it's coming from the industrial hemp plant. So CBD in and of itself, again, has no psychoactive effects, and there's no, regardless of which plant it's coming from, the federal government has actually proven that it is non-toxic and that it's non-lethal. There's something called the 507 patent that they own since 2003. With the National Institutes of Health, and if you can look it up, its name is cannabinoids as neuroprotectants and antioxidants. Okay, so there is no actual physical way for the body, the way that cannabis and the cannabinoids affect the body, for there to actually be a physical overdose on it. So you can't ever take too much CBD. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not to say if you get too much THC in your body that you might not have some adverse side effects from it. That's a completely different conversation and a
Okay.
completely different
Wow. So where do you get, I know you just love learning about this stuff anyways, and you talked about your background a little bit, but where do you get your education?
story. One of the doctors that I happen to follow, his name is Dr. Stuart Titus. He actually is the most sought after doctor in the world that educates other doctors on the body's endocannabinoid system. So he's somebody I happen to follow closely. And I know some of the things that he's been doing with the companies that he works with the World
Mm-hmm.
Health Organization, and passing laws in other countries. But there again, really just Googling CBD and anything you can think of, you can find a lot of those independent scientific studies out there. There's also a resource called echoconnection.org, and there's an education tab on there that has some links to a few of those studies that you can take a look at as well. And a lot of it really just comes from networking here locally in Colorado with some other people that I know that are leaders in the industry on both the hemp front and on the marijuana front, and just conversating with them and watching what they're doing, especially in terms of changing legislation here in Colorado.
Yeah. So one of our viewers posted something in the chat saying caveat emptor. Absolutely, right? Buyer beware on this, and become educated. So if, let's talk about how you would work with someone, because I'm really interested in someone who might be seeking out help and guidance rather than, trying to find all this out yourself. If someone were to contact you and say, hey, Jennilynne, I think CBD is something that I want, it's kind of like somebody taking an ad into their doctor with a picture of a woman running through a field of flowers saying, would this drug help me? So somebody coming to you saying, I think I want to get on CBD. What process would you walk them through to make sure, A, it's the right thing for them, and B, what to recommend to them?
Well, I mean, CBD definitely is not the answer for everything, just like nothing really
Right.
is. So there's some things that first I would educate them on the endocannabinoid system. I mean, really, because just in terms of that as a baseline, whether or not they have any health ailments going on, the body essentially needs to be fed. Every mammal has an endocannabinoid system, so that means your pets as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, in order for it to naturally do what it needs to do, it needs to be fed these phytocannabinoids. We're not being breastfed anymore,
Mm-hmm.
because breast milk actually produces cannabinoids. So we need another way to get it into the body. So talk to them definitely about that and how that works, just for the optimization of how the body is functioning, and then see if they want to try it from there just for that. But if there are other ailments and whatnot going on with the body, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not dosing or prescribing or anything
Right.
like that. But definitely point them in the direction of taking a look at some of these independent scientific studies and seeing, so that they can make an educated and informed decision for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
about whether or not it's right for them. And then there are some certain things that people who may be on things like blood thinners or things like that may need to watch out for when they are considering taking CBD, and more so in terms of just closer monitoring by their doctor, to make sure that they're still taking the right amount of medications if they're still on other medications.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the uses of CBD. We kind of brushed over it a little bit. We talked about concussions and things like that, where we've had our own personal benefits. We have our own stories of wellness. My husband is a massage therapist, and he does make available massage with CBD oil in the massage oil, and his clients have loved it for the pain remedy that they have felt from it. But what are some of the other reasons that people would seek out using CBD? Because I think that's where a lot of the mystery is. There's a lot of people think it is the greatest thing. It's going to solve all your problems. And as you said, it may not be appropriate. But, what type of person should be looking at it? And again, you're not diagnosing, but what have you seen from your experience?
Just from my experiences, it could be anything simple and small from a burn. I mean, I got a burn here, and I don't know how closely you can see it, but it's a
Oh,
pretty.
yeah. Oh, that's bad.
The only thing I've put on this is CBD. I
Wow.
didn't, and I'm not saying don't seek medical attention. I happen to choose to not do that, and the only thing I've put on is CBD, and I've had no problems, no infection, nothing. So it could be something as simple as a cut or a burn, all the way up to, I know Stanford did a study earlier last year, linking a deficiency in the endocannabinoid system with Alzheimer's. So, I mean, it could be all sorts of different neurological things, could be PTSD, could be depression, anxiety. There's a lot of legislation going around about autism right now, and scientific studies done around that as well. Diabetes, I mean, there are cancer, so many different ailments that people seek out and do research on and look at CBD for. And again, not a doctor, not diagnosing or recommending. These are just things that I've seen people use it for, and then also the scientific studies that exist out there for it.
I think there's a lot of fear in that we are talking about health-related issues and people seeking alternative treatments, and that this is a fad and a trend. But as you said, it's actually been around since time began almost.
Essentially, yes. And it was really the traditional sort of medicine that was used all around the world for various different ailments. I mean, I think menstrual cramps even used for.
Yeah, so it's just really introducing it back into our daily lives, as opposed to this being a fad, although there are still some that are out there and it is a fad for them and it is a trend. So it really is cautionary to know what you're doing. Don't just jump on the bandwagon because somebody says, hey, you ought to try this, and you don't know what you're doing. You need to seek out someone who can help guide you through it, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And another thing to watch out for too is there are some people who I know are especially afraid to try it because they are in positions, whether it be a job or they're receiving some form of check, where they have to be cautious about any drug testing that may occur.
Good point.
And so, again, it has trace amounts of THC, less than 0.03. The likelihood of it showing up on a drug test is pretty slim if it's actually made in compliance with being an actual industrial hemp plant with the federal farm bill. However, everyone's body metabolizes differently. So there is still a possible chance that it could show up on a drug screening. If you are taking it, in a pill form, or if you're taking it sublingually, which just means under the tongue, which is one of the ways for it to absorb in the body. Any oral application, essentially, or even if you're using it topically like I did and you happen to have an open wound, it could potentially get into your bloodstream and could potentially show up on a drug screen. So you just want to be mindful of that and weigh your risks there, and or find a company that has a product where they are just purely extracting the CBD. And I know I said that the whole plant is best earlier. So if you don't have to worry about that and you can take the whole plant, that is really the best thing that the research has shown. However, if you either have to be cautious of that or you just really don't want the THC in your body at all, then find a product that is just the pure CBD, like isolate, extracted out of the plant, or find one that is the entire plant with the THC removed.
Okay. We have a great question from one of our viewers. What forms does CBD come in? An ointment, pill, injectable? What form is it in?
So you can find topicals that either come like in creams or patches. You can find pills that you can ingest, liquid that might, you may put it on a teaspoon and put it under your tongue and hold it before you swallow it. It may come in drops, or a liquid that you pump under the tongue. It may come in more of a paste form, that you still, again, there take orally. And then one of the other really great ways to take it as well is through vaping. because they've actually shown that vaping is the fastest way to cross the blood-brain barrier. But there again, you want to be really, really careful of what is being used in the vape. So that's sometimes a lot of where you will see that propylene glycol. So for the carrier oil, so you want to make sure that it's an MCT oil, because that's not, that propylene glycol is not good for your lungs.
Right. So you're putting it under your tongue. What does it taste like?
It really depends. It varies depending on whether it's that liquid, that paste, the drops. It depends on the company that's making it. Sometimes it tastes really good. Sometimes it just kind of tastes like a neutral oil that doesn't really taste like anything. Sometimes, especially when it's the whole plant, some people don't necessarily care for the taste. I mean, you're getting the chlorophyll. It's the plant.
Mm-hmm.
So it might not taste the best. So there again, there's other ways where you can take it in the pill form as well. So you're not having to worry about the taste necessarily. The one thing you do want to be aware of is the absorption rate into the body. So anytime you're having something go through your digestive tract, it's not going to be as absorbent as maybe like something sublingually. So either way, it's probably best to ingest it with food or take food prior to taking it so that it increases that rate in the body.
We do have some oil here in our house that we use, and we take it, you said sublingually, was that what it was? Okay, underneath the tongue, and smelling it, I didn't want to do it, and in fact, I didn't do it for a while, and my husband finally convinced me, when you place the dropper underneath your tongue, you're not tasting it until you swallow, because there's no taste buds underneath the tongue. Of course, but it just was what it was. And I found that when you do swallow it, and you hold it there for as long as you possibly can, because you're needing it to get absorbed into the body. So it's not like cough syrup where you're pouring it into a teaspoon and you're taking it and swallowing it and you're tasting it. It's not that at all. It's actually not as unpleasant as the one could work themselves up to believe, right?
And there again, too, it depends on how much your body naturally salivates, because
Mm-hmm.
even just sitting there holding it under your tongue, your mouth is naturally salivating. It just happens to get back there, and then
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah, but the side effects, or not the benefits of it far outweigh that momentary displeasure. But you're right. Some of them are not bad tasting. Some of them are not so great, but it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Well, what else would you like to add that you think that consumers should know about?
I mean, really, it's just kind of letting go of the stigma.
Yeah.
And the essential brainwashing that has happened over the last several years. Think of this as, for the most part, nothing more than a daily dietary supplement. I mean, our bodies need it just like we need to take our regular vitamins every single day. And in fact, you're not going to necessarily get the CBD benefits, but even just eating hemp seeds and taking hemp protein powder and all that, they've shown that the optimal ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 that the body should have is actually only found in the hemp plant.
Oh, wow.
So it's great for those essential fatty acids, your just daily vitamins. I mean, it's really, they kind of call it the miracle plant.
Mm-hmm. Sounds awesome. Well, I'm going to share here real quick Jennilynne's contact information. So if anyone would like to reach out to her, find out a little bit more, she is available to work with you. Jennilynne is based in Colorado, but she can work with anyone anywhere in the U.S. for consultation, I'm sure, just by contacting her through email. But Jennilynne, I want to say thank you for joining me today. You are my go-to person when it comes to wanting information about the CBD and the difference between the marijuana and the hemp. So I really do appreciate you joining me today. And anything else you want to add as a last resort?
No, just thank you for having me, and thank
Absolutely.
you everyone watching this for being open to the re-education process around this plant and around CBD.
Awesome. And for our viewers, we do these Apple a Day webinars twice a month. They are on the second and fourth fourth Thursdays of every month at 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. They are always free, and they are always available through our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook at You Define Wellness, and our website address is youdefinewellness.com. So thank you for joining us today.